Hello, Nkqonkqo sanibonani babukeli. This is Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. Sinphakela lona la kumamba phambili phela SABC 1 eMzansi for sure. Sikhona futhi na ku SABC Plus. Uhlezi noMangcolo simbukeli. Hope all of you had a great Christmas day. Sinifisela futhi namaholiday amahle naphephile mbukeli. Uyazi ke ukuthi ngalesikhathi thina sisazirelaxele kanjena. Otsotsi bathatha lelo thuba phela ukuthi basicathamele babaleke nezimali zethu singanakile. Yes mbukeli, we are all in a festive mood, but scammers, trust me, are always at work at this time of the year. Well, to talk to us more about emerging trends of various scams and how we can stay vigilant as consumers, let's extend a very warm welcome to Nazia Karrim from the Southern African Fraud Prevention Services. She is joining us from our Cape Town studios. Yebo mbukeli la e-studio sinaye futhi Ntshiki Maluleka nyamkhumbula ovela lapha e-South African Banking Risk Information Center phecelezi SABRIC. Uzosivula ke mbukeli amehlo ngobugebengu kakhulukazi ngalesi sikhathi sonyaka. Ntshiki, very warm welcome to you. Happy festive season. Sakwamukela ohlelweni.
Thank you and much appreciated, and wishing the viewers a happy and prosperous season as well.
Let's hope amaphakethe abo are safe. Ntshiki, I'm going to talk to you about that. And Nazia, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Look, talk to us a bit about what the Southern African Fraud Prevention Services do. What is your role particularly in this industry as we discuss the various scams that are emerging, particularly when it comes to banking?
Well, thank you for having us on the show today. So SAFPS is actually specializing in fraud prevention services, and our role is to provide the consumer with as many tools and services that they can use to actually prevent themselves from falling victim. We offer a range of products and services both for businesses and consumers to help prevent, detect, and actually action fraud incidents that are being reported to help drive awareness at ground level.
Very interesting indeed. Ntshiki, nina nithini njengoba kuyi-festive siyazi ukuthi otsotsi they are working overtime and coming up with new tricks and scams ukuthi bathathe the very little money esiyisebenzele kanzima. What are some of the projects enibhizi ngazo ukuthi nenze sure ukuthi ama-consumers are guarded?
Absolutely, Sibona, even on the social media platform where we are seeing social engineering. It's utilized as a conduit by sebenzisa target accounts and bank accounts. They will be purporting as though they are a trusted financial institution and deceiving or duping the poor victims into displaying their personal information or their OTP, or alternatively their one-time banking codes, where they will utilize those codes in order to fraudulently access their bank account and do fraudulent transactions. Manje sithi babona ababukeli abalale babheke kakhulu because there's phishing. Sibiza phishing. Sibona na kuma-vishing. Sibona na futhi sesibona bayenza all those other measures in order to deceive people as though they are from the bank. Bathreatenisha nabantu bathi hayi sizayivala le account yakho and bakwazi kuyivala. But bathumela lama SMS, lama SMS ethi you've won millions. And whereas if it's too good to be true,
Ntshiki, kunini sibakhuza ngalama SMS ukuthi you've won this amount in order to access your money, but people need to listen. Nazia, look, maybe identify some of the trends, like one of the biggest trends that you've actually, through research and of course through cautioning and governing this sector, that you've actually realized and taken cognizant of as being one of the biggest modus operandi and the types of scams that these scammers are using.
Well, currently the top 3 scams that are being reported by victims are advanced fee scams, which is making up about 34% of the incidents being reported. And these are largely due to goods and services type scams, scams that involve online shopping, also scams that involve loans, loan applications, which are actually targeting consumers with low credit scores. After that, not far behind is actually investment scams, and investment scams are sitting at about 23% of this of the volumes reported. And these are involving online trading scams, cryptocurrency investment scams, and these are places where people don't understand the financial instruments, or are a bit over ambitious in trying to adventure out into new forms of income sources without actually having done due diligence behind it. And not very uncommon now is also incidents that are being reported by victims regarding cyber scams. And this is making up about 14% of the incident volumes that are being reported. Unfortunately, they are largely related to the hacking of social media profiles, the hacking of the accounts, getting into the devices, loading malware on your devices, and also online impersonation attempts. And this is becoming really dangerous, because what's happening is on the online impersonation attempts, they will actually also, if they've hacked your social media account, attempt to extort your family for funds and services, or may even impersonate you in very nefarious situations that would result in actually blackmailing you to prevent you from actually being exposed further.
But nina as ilokhuzana banking sector, imaphi ama-scams enibona ukuthi are prevalent, particularly around this time? I know ukuthi when before Sizemoyen, we spoke about the fact that there is a rise now in kidnappings where people are abducted and are forced ukuthi ba increase limit ukuthi uzohamba ayo withdraw, or alternatively omunye in another instance they were made ukuthi bathathe loan, but now this fell outside of business hours. So what mechanisms and measures are currently in place for Rama banks to ensure ukuthi if they pick up ukuthi there's suspicious activity that is happening on this account, bavane block at the same time?
And the banks have developed such innovations.
Like, exactly,
such
sophisticated
innovations
software, yes, and technology.
To access a banking anywhere, anytime, at any place. Because we know we are we're operating in a global space.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now what we've seen when this kidnapping started, where they are forcing, they will kidnap a victim and force them to increase their limits on their applications and also access their applications, do transactions. If there's an excess loan amount from the loan, so they will access those funds. So we are warning, saying that please make sure that the limits are set to the minimum, the bare minimum. Although, however, they will be able to try and increase those limits. Customer centricity also comes into play, where it can be prevented via two-factor authentication as well. And see, communicate in our banks. If you are traveling outside the country, or you are probably doing your online banking space. So, and we have seen those as the scams in the digital space that are increasing. Digital space, we saw 22% increase in terms of the incidents that were occurred between 2021 and 2022. So in 2022, that's where you saw that definitely the gross losses went up to almost 740 million. Jeez. That was gross losses on the digital platforms. So we are warning, saying that people should be cautious when doing their digital banking, activate your two-factor authentication, and also make sure that those banking apps you log off. And even though when you are in the e-commerce space, as it is festive season, people are shopping online, make sure that you're shopping on secure site. You look for the telltale sign, which is a lock at the bottom of any website, which is secure, to show that it is secure website before sharing your credit card details and the CVV number. And also activate your virtual card. The virtual card is on the app itself or on the phone itself. And that will also mitigate some of the incidences that we are seeing that are on the increase.
Very interesting that you mentioned Yona Lena Bunsigo indaba yelokhuzana ye virtual card. I'm going to deliberate further into that. Mbukeli, let's quickly take an ad break. Siyabuya khona manje ungayindawo. Mbukeli, welcome back. Namhlanje ke uhlelo lethu is pre-recorded. So unfortunately, Mbukeli, you can't get in touch with me, but you can interact with us on our social media platforms, lapha ku-X, sikhona ku-Facebook, as well as on email. That is consumer@sabc.co.za. Ngihleli lana nobhuti ila e-studio ubhuti Ntshiki Maluleka ovela SABRIC alongside Miss Nazia Karrim. She is from the Southern African Fraud Prevention Service. She's joining us from our Cape Town studios. Mbukeli, siyakucebisa ukuthi wena kumele uzivikele kanjani njengoba phela otsotsi bethe hey siyasina siyagomela ukuthi balahlile babhizi bakwi-festive mood ithi thina sibashaya la kubuhlungu khona emaphaketheni. So Nazia, maybe let's talk about that. I mean, the whole point of having that virtual card is to leave your wallet at home, leave your actual card at home. But what are the safety measures around this type of transacting, particularly when you go for your shopping? Because if your cell phone is lost, automatically that whole information, it basically falls into the wrong hands, and you could be cleaned up just by trying to be careful.
Yeah, your cell phone today is your life. All your information's on it, all your personal information is on it, your banking, access to everything that you do every day is on your device. So it's quite important that when you use that device, you actually protect it effectively. And one of the ways to do that, firstly, is to make sure that you have not just a 4-digit PIN on the device, but at least a good combination of alphas and numerics to actually open or access the device. If you don't do that protection, you're leaving your phone quite open for the scammers or the thieves who've stolen your phone to actually access or hack your device. When it comes to virtual cards, one of the reasons virtual cards are put into place was to help prevent card skimming and the theft of actual cards to purchase transactions on your account. You need to make use of these services so that these transactions are linked directly into your account. Your card details are not exposed to anybody outside. Nobody can take a photo of your card number or your CVV. And you don't have to input this information at any one of those terminals. You can just tap and scan and enter your PIN number and move on. And these are some of the features that are actually implemented with those types of solutions. But the responsibility still lies with you as the consumer, because you need to make sure you don't share that information with anybody and that you protect it correctly.
Maybe tell us about what you've seen in terms of research. Who are these intended victims? Who are they always targeting? Because previously we used to think it's people that were not technologically savvy, but it just seems like anybody, even you and I, can be a target.
Well, I think the first thing we need to remember is that scammers are masters of manipulation, and they've got it down to a fine art. They manipulate our emotions, our beliefs, abuse our needs and wants, and our trust. The perpetrators use our desperation and all these emotional, social standards to meet success, our impressions and images to actually manipulate us into actually falling for the scams. Some of the most common victims included people either desperate due to financial situations or personal circumstances, and they're now looking for a way to earn an extra source of income or finding access to funds to help alleviate their current circumstances. Others are a little more ambitious and try to get rich quick, and they're looking for the easiest route to make that next million or make that extra buck in their pocket. And they fail to actually do the due diligence behind it, especially when it comes to investment type scams. I think the question you need to always ask yourself is, this type of investment, is it in a regulated environment? Is the institution that's offering these wonderful investments at great, fantastic returns, are they actually regulated? And if something just sounds too good to be true, it actually is. I think one of the other cases that is just coming down to consumers' laziness. In many cases, we fail to do our due diligence because we actually find the effort cumbersome. A little earlier, the gentleman mentioned about the fact that when you go online shopping, you need to check the websites. Yes, you need to make sure, especially now that it's Black Friday and holiday season, you need to check that those websites that you are entering are in fact the real websites and not fake websites or phishing websites or websites that are impersonating online shopping sites that you actually love and trust. And you can use the tools on a product that SAFPS created called YIMA to actually check these websites before you actually enter it and before you click on it and actually fall victim. And that could be an exercise that you could practice as part of that due diligence.
Thank you, Nazia. You're going to tell us a bit more about, the thinking around YIMA. I just want to extend the same question. Nina nibona ukuthi obani lama victims, who is the intended victim? Because njengoba esho Nazia ukuthi sometimes basebenzise ilokhuzana mhlambe i-letterhead ongeke uzuyibone wena ongekho equipped ukuthi like forensically ukuthi ubone the difference between the original one nale efake. Uyibona kanjani leyo nto? Who are the victims? So bafuna ukusilutha sonke kahle kahle. Abakhethi
bane information they harvest that they use the data breaches ne ransomware but target those huge companies with our personal information. So as SFPS has alluded to, akwazi ukuthi uyenze due diligence sibone ukuthi kwenzakalani kulento, so we shouldn't be transacting on websites that are not trusted, and we shouldn't be transacting also on environments that are not trusted. We should double check for whether this website is a verified or a secure website, and this thing need personal information. Our personal information shouldn't be on our social media platform or should be sent via emails. And we should also not be clicking on those links when we receive an email, it purports out to log in there and give out our personal information. Because that's where after harvesting the personal information, they bring out the social engineering element, and they will be able to purport as though they are from the bank or from the financial institute. And we have seen recently the SARS e-filing processes.
Oh, yes.
Where they were purporting to be from SARS and say, no, you've got
otherwise the whole country was in stitches on some, like we're going to all get arrested for companies that some of them had been redundant forever. Nazia, talk to us about that. I mean, talk to us about YIMA and what is the intended purpose behind it?
Well, scams has definitely gone crazy over the last few years, and in the last year alone, it went up by 150%. And SAFPS, when we investigated, we realized there isn't actually any solutions out there for the consumers to actually protect themselves or empower themselves. We were talking about it, but we were not giving them anything to help prevent the problem. And so that initiative came out where we developed YIMA as a toolbox that will help prevent the problem, give the consumer some form of empowerment in that regard. And this toolbox has various types of tools that will allow you, for example, to scan that website that you want to actually visit, scan the URL to check if it has been previously reported for an incident of phishing or scams or fraud, check if there's any malicious information or data or malware on the actual site. Protect yourself before you actually click on the link. Another tool that's on the website is also provided. It's called Verifier. It's for biometrically validating a particular individual.
Yeah.
Today we have a lot of impersonation, people claiming to be somebody else, people claiming to be impersonating other people. And we need to know that the person we're dealing with is the right person. I mean, romance scams is quite a big thing in our country. And part of that requirement is that today you want to get involved with somebody, but you're so afraid that you don't know the person. We allow this tool to do a biometric validation against the Department of Home Affairs. So you can confirm the identity of the person that you're planning to perhaps have that relationship with. There are a few other tools on the website that allow you to be able to check if you're actually also being targeted in a scam.
Okay.
But aside from the prevention and detection, we also noticed that victims didn't know what to do when they fell victim.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so we provided channels for them to actually report an incident online, and also a hotline that you can call directly, and it will take you to the actual financial institutions, banks, contact centers, or telecom centers that are working in conjunction with the YIMA program. It'll take you directly to their fraud contact centers, and you'll be able to report the incident immediately. So you don't have to go around looking for each institution's fraud center or helpline. You just dial one number, which is 083-123-SCAM or 7226, and it will take you through to all of these institutions to help report the incident immediately, so that you don't have too many other incidents happening after that, and you can actually stop the problem when it's being reported.
Very interesting to note, Nazia. You're going to repeat that number after this short break. In Bugeli, we're talking about the prevalent scams. Njengoba phela kuyisikhathi samaholide nani nizirelaxele, you all in a festive mood, niyabeka nje ama-phones, nihamba nikhokha ngama-virtual card, you are not logging off lawo malokhuzana lawo ma-banking apps. We're back shortly after this. We are pre-recorded again namhlanje, but we are talking about the prevalent scams njengoba phela ninethezekile emakhaya nigubha amaholide. Sithi ke iziphi izinto ekumele nizibheke nizigadisise uma sekufikela phela ekutheni otsotsi, they always find the smallest opportunity ukuthi walahla bona bayawina. My guest today Ntshiki Maluleka ovela SABRIC alongside Miss Nazia Karrim ovela SA Fraud Prevention Service. All right, so Ntshiki, I mean, let's talk about that impersonation. Related to that question again, I was earlier on, Uguti, for example, if umuntu has been kidnapped now, what means do the banking institutions then have to actually identify that either this person is in distress or two, there's actually somebody impersonating this individual? Are there any mechanisms that are currently in place for banks to try and raise the alarm at the slightest points?
Remember, the banks will be able to give access point to that our consumer.
I'm interested in the verification process in terms of how are they able to determine that the person that is requesting for this loan is actually the individual that is the rightful owner of the account?
Absolutely, because now the verification process, it's the OTP, and it will be the biometrics.
Well, I'm sitting with scammers. They've got a gun to my head. The phone is there. The OTP yangena lapha. So how do I get around that, Ntshiki?
Because now that's where now the customer centricity comes to play. There are so much technology that the banks have rolled out, that customer centricity, that it can even utilizing data science tools, that they will be able to track whether you are transacting at this place, you are to transact at that place for prevention purposes. But however, the onus still lies upon the victim to make sure that they set those limits to the bare minimum. And even though utilizing the biometrics, utilizing the two-factor authentication, they have to make sure that they secure their banking platform in order that there will be some things that will raise an alert and for to inform the fraud hotlines to notify them immediately should their phone get lost, because that's where should their phone get lost, that's where the criminals are able to jailbreak and utilize the social engineering element by doing the phishing and even sending the phishing emails, so purporting that we have found your phone, but you give us the PIN code to make sure that this is your phone. There was a case study where we have saw there was recent snatching of phones on public spaces. There was recent snatching of phones, and they were utilizing that information in order to do social engineering, harvest additional information, and they were able to access the banking app in order to jailbreak by purporting to be from the financial institution. Because the scammers are also playing on the element of greed and the element of vulnerability, and saying that no, we have found your phone. They know that will be the catchphrase, and the person won't be raising any alerts, and they will be responding to those phishing emails, giving away the PIN codes and the one-time passwords.
But then, I mean, that means then there's a whole conglomerate of people that need to be responsible for the safety. We're talking, Ms. Kuluma ngokuthi izinto sensitive njenge-information kwi-phone, service providers come into play, of which a lot of people we've heard ukuthi even if they try and phone their service providers, they never respond quick enough ukuthi hlambe ba-block leyo number or something like that, to which leads to the scammers even getting as far as to create a SIM swap. So talk to us about that. Say now usufailile through all these various means ukuthi uyazama ukuthi uyareport. What can you do in the event yokuthi ifoni yakhe sithathiwe, people have done a SIM swap and nobody's calling you ukuthi akutshela ukuthi ifoni yakhe itholakele, but uyabona imali iyahamba. Let's say you have a laptop somewhere, you can see these transactions are still going.
And absolutely, that's why we say the first point of call is to alert your bank, so that we can make sure that we protect the money that is left. And now the second point of call is also to alert SAPS. SAPS will be able to assist with case numbers, and we are able to collaborate with them in order to ensure that we give them the best evidence that will enable them to track those syndicates. There are even geolocation that is utilized, that is shared with the law enforcement via all legalities like Section 205 processes. Also, we'll be able to secure the funds, and we'll be able to enable SAPS or enhance their capability in order to track those syndicates, and they might be able to be successful in tracking those syndicates.
Nazia, earlier on you spoke about, the value in having those virtual or digital cards. Let's talk to us about maybe the location feature that is on the phone, because apparently, according to my research, that is where a lot of people actually get their information harvested, because criminals can apparently track your location just by virtue of you having that location app on or service on. And apparently sometimes you cannot do much of your online banking without this feature actually being on. So it's a counterproductive type of means of doing this digital banking. How do you then get around that?
Well, I think the first thing we need to remember is that in this generation, we're all very brave with using the internet. We're all very free with sharing our information. And we spoke a little earlier about social engineering. And social engineering is also facilitated through the amount of information you share online. If you're going to keep communicating and publishing all your personal information, your personal activities, where you go, what you're doing, all of this is always constantly online. You're making it very easy for the scammers to be able to track you, trace you, understand your habits, your movements, and most likely, in some cases, be able to say, oh, that's the prime target that I want to be able to go after. When it comes to sharing your location and your information, you need to be careful. Where are you sharing this information? Who are you sharing it with, and why are you sharing it with them? Unfortunately, if you have clicked on a link, the gentleman spoke a little bit earlier about smishing and vishing attacks. If you clicked on a link in an SMS that allowed a particular type of malware, maybe, or an email that had a link in it that malware was installed on your device, and they were able to take control of it, they will be able to have these access to your information, have access to your device, and be able to control these things. That's why you need to be very careful that before you click on these links, or any link for that matter, you actually verify that the link is safe to do so. And I think most importantly, we need to remember is that none of our financial institutions will send you a link to click on via an SMS. They won't ask you for an OTP via a phone call. They're not allowed to ask you for an OTP. So you shouldn't be giving one out. And the moment somebody asks you for that, it's a phishing call. You should already identify that this is a scammer asking me for information I know I'm not allowed to give to any person, including the staff of any bank or financial institution. And the moment you give out these PIN numbers or you click on these links, you are actually making yourself vulnerable and you possibly compromising your devices and your information.
Very interesting indeed. Mbukeli uyaxwayiswa ukuthi uma phela usebenzisa wena i-device yakho wazi kahle ukuthi inama-banking apps, you need to be very careful ukuthi which features are on, like a location feature, nokuthi wena uhamba uyaposta yonke indawo, uyashutha, uyabonisa abantu ukuthi wena uphetheni. Mbukeli, we're coming back with more answers after this break right now. Bogeli, welcome back. We are talking ngama scams phela otsotsi abawenzayo ukuthi bakuhlukanise nemali. Ngalesikhathi se-festive uhleli wena lapho unethezekile imali iyahamba. Unakile ngisho kunaka. But Ntshiki, and this is what I find interesting. There is now this new trend whereby it's not a complete takeover ye phone ukuthi ubone and raise an alarm ukuthi yazini ngiyasola maybe ngiyahackwa or something is happening. Mhlambe kuzoqala kuhambe your emails and then gradually could be WhatsApp and then completely bathathe a complete takeover of ifone yakho. By the time we phethe when it device, it's basically rendered useless without you even noticing. So yiziphi izinto ekumele sizazi, particularly mesisebenza ngama-phone nama-banking apps?
Into ebalulekile kakhulu, first thing, even noma uthola iphone yakho, umelo set a privacy settings. So what we have seen, even from research, Google research, it showed that definitely there are people who, I mean, there was one question where they were inquiring, how often do you change your password?
Yeah.
90% the respondents, almost 90% the respondents, they said, no, but we never
We're so
I don't change
complacent.
I don't change my password. Since I've on Google, I've never changed my password. So that's why we have to have that habit of changing our password frequently. Probably it might be once in a quarter or probably quarterly. So depending on how do we want our devices to be secure. And we shouldn't avoid leaving our devices unattended. Just leaving the device on top of a table because they're near frequency activations that they will be enables the syndicates to in order to access the information on your particular phone. So people have to be cautious by just leaving their devices unattended. And also when we give away our devices to our kid, probably by upgrading our devices, we have to make sure that we delete the personal information, because you might not know whether our child will be surfing in those unsecured websites, and to also teach the kids to make sure that they are surfing on secure website. So that's where we make sure that we're digital savvy and we are up and secure.
Nazia, how do you start encouraging people to be digitally savvy? I mean, a lot of people will go to a mall, they'll have their Bluetooth on, they will log on to the public Wi-Fi that specifically says right next to it, unsecured, and then they're going to start wondering why they are losing money on a daily basis. I mean, how do we even drive this point home of people that they need to be vigilant?
I think the first step is we first need to educate them about what the problem is. I think many of our consumers look at it as it's an incident that happens to somebody else. It doesn't happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. I'm not in that environment. I won't click on the link. And they assume that it cannot happen to them, so they remove themselves from the situation. I think one of the most important points is to explain to them that it can happen to you. It can happen to me, and I am working in the fraud prevention space. It can happen to anybody. The moment you start realizing that if you're going to connect your device on an open network, and there's no security. You don't know if they've got a man in the middle situation where they're actually tracking all your movements. You don't know if you've allowed them to access your device to install malware. You don't know what information are accessed, because how many of them read the terms and conditions? How many of them are actually valid? How many of them are secure? You have not done those checks. You've just opened your device and connected to it. That is part of the failure of the due diligence. It's also a very carefree environment in terms of, like I mentioned earlier, wanting to use the internet but not understanding the risks associated to it. I think that first step is formally educating the consumers about it. We should start including these types of education in our education programs at schools and at universities, because these are the youngsters and the future generations, and they need to understand their lives 99.9% of the time online. They need to know how to actually manage that risk. Going about just clicking on any link and opening any websites, not doing your effective protections, you're going to fall victim. And at this point in time, I don't believe that consumers are taking the threat seriously.
Nazia, I mean, with smartphones basically taking over the industry and also being very easy and accessible for scammers to manipulate, I mean, there's some features that a lot of people will have a phone, but they don't even know what a particular function is all about, because we do not get enough education when we just go over the counter and buy a phone. People are just interested in sales. How do you then advise people to basically sit and be in a relationship with their phones to get to know all the features that their phone can actually perform in order to protect themselves?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat that question. You broke off.
All right. Well, I'm talking about smartphones and how they've basically taken over the industry, Nazia. And I'm asking, how do we then even start educating people to get in acquaintance, for lack of a better term, with their phones, be in a love relationship with their phones in order to understand all those security services and actually protect themselves? Because a lot of people will have a smartphone, they don't even know where to go for those settings, the critical ones. You'll find that they haven't even switched off data that will automatically be distributing information as soon as you walk into a place like a mall.
Well, I think the first thing is we'll never be able to separate the phone from our hands today. It's really one part of our life, and we need to understand what the different modus operandi are for the scammers, and we need to explain to all the consumers how they could be targeted. For example, modus operandi could be as simple as phishing scams, where they're looking to get information about you from that device. Remember, we spoke a little earlier that the device is holding all your life information. Today, you might have copies of your IDs, you have your banking applications, you have information about your personal life and your family. All this information is stored on that device, and this type of phishing would have access to those devices. It could be even more complex, where they start embedding malware on your devices. And these could come via suspicious or malicious links. And they could use this to extort people, or a company for that matter. And in more nefarious situations, it could actually result in human trafficking. And we need to explain to consumers that when you are using these devices, you need to understand the security features. Take some time to actually read the section of the manual on how to actually activate those features on your device. And most importantly, when you're sharing, careful of what you are sharing. Don't just download any app from the store. Don't embed any type of software that's not authorized or vetted. And when you are actually using these devices, find out how to protect yourself. You activate the two-factor authentication. And I know a lot of people have come back and they told me, it's such a pain to do it.
It is.
Because I have to remember so many passwords. Load an authenticator app on your device if you feel it's too too difficult to remember all the different passwords, and all you would need to do is activate that two-factor authentication and use the authenticator app to complete that process. But part of that responsibility is going to come from us actually educating all the consumers and our children and ourselves on a continuous basis, creating it as a part of a habit that we do every day in our lives.
Absolutely. And ngifuna ukukubuza as wena Ntshiki ukuthi as Nazia is talking about authenticity. Wenza njani if you see or uyasola ukuthi i-transaction ngathi ayikho authentic? What is your first call of duty?
Absolutely. Mawubona ukuthi hayi authentic. That's what the point of call is, to alert the fraud call center.
Okay.
Because there are means that they will be able to track whether this transaction is authentic or not. Sibona na good debit order scam.
Yeah.
But also before releasing any goods, before maybe doing business with somebody who's online or on Facebook selling goods, make sure that they are authentic as well. Do Google reviews just to review on terms of who has been doing business with this person before transacting any funds to that person. And also before releasing, when you advertise goods, before releasing your goods that you might be selling on those platforms, social media, make sure that that deposit that they claim is from the bank is authentic, it's authenticated by the bank, and the funds are released into your account first before releasing those goods.
I had a very interesting story as Ntshiki ethi umuntu bangishontshele imoto baqeda lapho mengiyoyireport abathi yimi ontshontshele imoto, so now I have to be the one that needs to prove ukuthi imoto eyami in actual retrospect. Mbukeli, let's take another quick ad break. We're back shortly after this. Hey, ningcolile ama scam siyabuya. It's our final segment. Sisagopa festive season. We are talking about ama-prevalent scams, ama-otsotsi abathatha ithuba ukuthi bawasebenzise ukuze phela banithathele imali yenu nisebenzele kanzima. While ninganakile ningcebelekile lapha emalwandle nasemaholidini. My guest today, Ntshiki Maluleka ovele SABRIC, alongside Miss Nazia Karrim ovele SA Fraud Prevention Services, and she's joining us from our Cape Town studios. Nazia, just maybe in closing, I mean, talk to us about some tips, particularly when it comes to, we've spoken at length about, you know, how consumers can actually protect themselves where they have banking apps. But how do you not make yourself a target of scammers?
Well, I think the first thing you need to do is you need to practice a concept that we call active awareness. And this is the ability for you to be able to proactively apply the prevention steps in your life. So we mentioned a little earlier the links. Check the link for its security features. Use the DNS scanners, for example, on the YIMA website to check if that particular website has been reported for any malicious activity. Has it been blacklisted already? Should I actually be visiting the site? When you're actually going to invest in a particular company, do the logic and see if it's a regulated environment. Am I going to be able to track, trace, and follow up on this particular institution? Those are the types of checks you need to do from a normal, regular, everyday life. I think you also need to apply some logic. If, for example, somebody comes to you and is selling you an iPhone for 5,000 Rand and it's brand spanking new, you need to stop and ask the question, why?
Exactly.
An iPhone can never be brand new at 5,000 Rand.
True.
This device is an expensive device. You need to stop and say, is this device stolen, or is this perhaps a fake online shopping website? The moment I put my card details and my information here, it's going to get phished, and the scam is then going to be able to use that information to perpetrate further fraud on my name, or clean out my bank account if I've entered my credit card details or debit card details online. And I think lastly, and most importantly, you need to be able to want to protect yourself.
True.
And that requires you to stay abreast of what is going on. For example, it's holiday season now. It's Black Friday season now, and guys are going crazy online. The scammers are going to take wonderful advantage of this by putting up fake online shopping sites. The travel scams are going to come out now, offering you great holidays at ridiculously cheap prices, and they literally are too good to be true. And you need to stop again and say, hey, can this actually be a scam? And if you don't stop and think before you click on that link, you are going to get scammed.
So basically, vigilance. Mbukeli. Ngizokubuza the same question, Ntshiki, and particularly, so mama thina sesithanda ukuthi we can shop sihlele endlini i-online shopping. Hey, siyalahlekelwa yimali. Ngicela ubacebise labantu.
Sithi bayinakekele. And nakwamanje sibona even online they are able to activate the apps. They were targeting the elderly recently by activating the apps without their knowledge, because they've got their personal information harvested somewhere, and they use the social engineering by just to get additional information in order to activate those apps and transact on those apps. So say, hey, be cautious. If your phone or you suspect that, hey, gonna activation any which we don't understand or any transaction, but notify their bank immediately. Should you lose your phone over the holidays, Sibega my phone, we just said that we are chilling outside in the pool or wherever, so make sure that you are with your phone. Any transaction or notification from the bank, respond on it or act on it if you are not the one who authorized that transaction. And carrying cash safely. Kuma ATMs, there's no need to carry cash, a large amount of cash, because it's festive season.
Baya withdraw in the middle of umgaqo. Akazi nokuthi obani who's lurking around this ATM or use the ATM before umuntu uzo withdraw imali khona lapho Ntshiki.
And it's bona na uma stock fail, maba sharisha le imali, because it's festive. We are going to share that money that we savings that we accumulated over the whole year. We can share on the platforms, not on via cash, carrying cash safe or withdrawals online. Bangayikwazi ukuthi bangaphathi imali le mali ngemkhundla bayiphathe bafike bayosharisha lapho.
Bafuna ukuyibona phela imali.
They're exposing themselves and making themselves vulnerable to be victims and for robbery on the other side. And we sithi banakekele kakhulu, because that's when you withdraw too much cash, you are drawing unnecessary attention to yourself, and they might be displaying, because people are standing around the ATMs and they should never allow anybody to assist them next to the ATMs, because they should make sure that they cover their PIN and secure that PIN by covering that PIN when you're doing your withdrawals. But you can do your transactions on your phone. There's virtual card, or there's another card transaction that you can just quickly tap your card and do your payments.
And I know there's various banks that actually offer i-tokfela, like izinto like i-tokfela means ukuthi babhadalane without any of them actually having to carry like hard cash on them.
Absolutely. And I mean, say siyabakwazi nokubasiza ukuthi no bayisave kanjani, bayidistribute kanjani le mali. And sithi banakekele kakhulu, because bangane constitution or lento le bayicontrola i-stockfel sabo, that's where now authority ima cash transactions.
Ntshiki uzohamba nesamba sonke besiqokelwe the whole year athi yena meyodraw kuthiwa akazosihlukanisela usedle phansi. Nazia, what happens then if one is listed on SAFPS as a scammer?
Well, SAFPS collects confirmed fraud incidents centrally. So if you actually get listed as a scammer, the information, your information, or that incident information gets loaded centrally. And the whole point of this is so that that information cannot be reused to perpetrate another scam. And if that information is collected, all the information we get from the victims, the reports that are coming through our members, we use it to gather intelligence to help us identify syndicated behavior, and we work in conjunction with the authorities and institutions and law enforcement like the 419 scams team from the Hawks, the Southern African Cyber Fraud Task Teams, and we collect this intelligence and we go back and we say, hey, this is how it's happening. And one of the reasons it's important for us to have these incidents reported is because if we don't get that report from you as the victim, we can't collect that incident data to help identify those scammers or those fraudsters for that matter. And it's very important that we have that information listed, and it's important for the scammers to know that eventually you are going to get caught because we are looking for you.
And very quickly, Nazia, how can consumers be in contact with SAFPS?
Well, we have a website. You can go to the website. It's www.yima.org.za, or you can contact the hotline, which is 083-123-7226 if you have an emergency. Or you can even visit our SAFPS website, which is www.safps.org.za.
Thank you so much for your input. That is Ms. Nazia Karrim from the SA Fraud Prevention Service. In closing, Ntshiki, very quickly, we've got like 10 seconds. Your last message to abantu emakhaya nokuthi nina nitholakala kanjani uma besola ukuthi bayascam.
Sithi bazinakekele and make sure ukuthi ba-transacta safely on ATMs kakhulu, and they should target ATMs that are busy and well-lit ATMs. Do not just transact with any ATM. And makune fraud, by contact the Kuma website here to www.sabric.co.za or Kuma social media, Instagram, X, the corner, by follow ish. So additional tips and wishing them prosperous festive season.
Thank you so much. Siyabonga kakhulu Ntshiki Maluleka from SABRIC alongside. Thank you so much, Nazia. Miss Nazia Karrim there. She's from the SA Fraud Prevention Service. Mbukeli, let's hope ukuthi sizamileke ukuthi nje sithi ukucebisa nawe ukwazi ukuthi wenze sure ukuthi you are safe this festive season, because le mali siyayikhalela ngempela ukuthi we work hard for it ukuthi nokuthi nje umvani uyibone iphuma ungazi ukuthi iphume kanjani. So the onus is on you as well to be vigilant. Owakajala umntana uthi happy festive season. Nisale kahle.
Yilungelo